Hey all, welcome back to the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. I'm Darren, I'm your host. Today we welcome back a guest we've had on before, Mr. John Setzler of Man Cave Meals. We're going to discuss grills, smokers, and how you can use smoke as a seasoning and all that. I'll be right back with John Setzler of Man Cave Meals.
Smoking, grilling, getting hot and hotter, sous vide and chilling from fire and water.
Hey all, before we get on to the show, I want to talk to you for a second about Instacart. Instacart's a great service that allows you to do all your grocery shopping online, and they can get you your groceries in as fast as 1 hour. They connect you with personal shoppers in your area that know your markets, and they can get them from your favorite stores. They find all the great buys and smart suggestions for you online to save you money. They pick the freshest produce, and they check your eggs and make sure they're not cracked. Check them out, guys. Instacart is offering free delivery on your first order of over $35 in the link below. Check them out. And now, on to the show. Welcome back to the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. I'm Darren, I'm your host, and I want to welcome back one of my previous guests, a friend of mine, Mr. John Setzler of Man Cave Meals. You might also see him in the Kamado Joe cooking videos. But welcome back, John. Go ahead and just do a brief introduction of who you are again.
Hi, Darren. Happy New Year, and thanks for having me on again. My name's John Setzler, and my gig is Man Cave Meals on Facebook. As far as social media is concerned, I do Man Cave Meals on Facebook and on YouTube, and I just love cooking. I'm that guy that lives next door that's got a grill running just all the time.
Well, that's for sure, and you've got plenty of them on your Man Cave deck now, and I'm still envious of some of the things you got on there. So let's kind of talk about that. You were just recently at the Atlanta Grill Company, which is a big grilling store out of north of Atlanta in Roswell, and I know that we've been hooked up with them. I even actually was up there last year. I missed this year, but I know you got to go up there and cook and see some new product and help with those guys. So how did that event go this year?
Oh man, that's always a lot of fun. That was the second big event I've gotten to be involved with Atlanta Grill Company. They call it their fire sale. They do it annually in December, and they do something like it in June also. But the December event was their kind of a first anniversary event of the grand opening of their new location, and they had a lot going on. Especially, I think Kamado Joe was the main sponsor of the event. They had Chef Eric Gephardt there and Chef Alex Suckup doing their Kamado magic. Had a couple of other people like myself and a few Luca Verini, Jeff Ledbetter, a few other from our little group there down there cooking. Matt Jones. We all had something going on somebody's grills, and now I'm going to feel guilty because I'm going to leave somebody out. We had quite a few people with a lot of things going on a lot of grills, and there's a huge crowd. It's just a constant flow of people. I would hate to guess at how many thousands of people roll through Atlanta Grill Company in a 4 or 5 hour period, but they got big sales going. They have discounts on all the accessories. They have some grill discounts going, and it's just a huge event. There's people lined up with their trucks to haul their new grills and accessories and charcoal away, and it's a great opportunity to get to see some of these grills in action, to get to see the inventory that they actually have at Atlanta Grill Company, and to meet the guys that run the show down there. You've got Gary and Jason and Marcus that really keep that boat floating, and they've got a lot of good things going on, a lot of good people working there. And I get to meet a lot of the people that follow me on Facebook. I take a lot of pictures with people that people want to meet me that have been following for so long, and it's just great. It really, solidifies why I do this when I get these people that walk up and say, man, I love cooking your recipes. It's great to finally get to meet you, and it's kind of humbling. So Yeah, it's a huge event, and it's well worth attending if you ever get the opportunity to go.
Yeah, I got to participate in that last year, and at the grand opening of the new facility, and I was just amazed at the size of the store, the inventory that they have, and the amount of people that showed up. And last year, when we did it, the grand opening, you remember it rained, pretty much the whole time we were there, and there was still, a couple thousand people must have come through that store during the day, and they sold, I know, several hundred grills that day because they were constantly busy and moving. And uh, it was it's just an amazing store. If you're ever in the Atlanta area, even if you're in the South there, even if you're in Macon, drive up to Atlanta and check out the Atlanta Grill Company, because it is something to see. If you like grilling, you'll be there for at least a couple hours, just looking through their sauces and rubs aisles. So it's amazing. So yeah.
Right. I've been down there several times, and it seems like every time I'm in there, I see something new that I didn't see before. I'm constantly discovering new things that they have, and that place really is truly the candy store for the barbecue kids.
Well, and I think with all the growth that's happening in the outside or outdoor cooking arena, is one of the things why that store is growing, because we've kind of talked about this before. Over the last 10 years, it used to be just a Weber kettle, or an old gas grill or what have you, is what people had on their back porch. But with all the technology and all the new fangled cooking appliances that are out on people's patios anymore, it's just constantly you turn around and there's something new coming out. It just seems to be growing a lot faster than it ever did before. What do you think about that?
Oh, oh, I definitely agree. It seems, from my perspective, that there's been I don't know if you want to call it a new revolution in barbecue and grilling, because of what you said, the technology. For instance, the pellet grills are bringing in a crowd of wood fire cookers that we didn't have before, because they're practically as easy to operate as a gas grill, and you can still get that wood fired flavor. The Kamado grills are, in my opinion, are giving you that same level of ease of use. Maybe not quite as easy as a pellet grill, but with the computerized temperature control systems that you can put on a Kamado grill these days, once you light your fire and set your controller running, it's basically a set and forget system at that point. So, yeah, it's opening doors and getting people away from gas grills. I've got nothing against gas grills. I cook on one here too, but it really is hard to beat that wood fired flavor that you get from charcoal and a wood fire.
Yeah, and I think that was the big thing with gas grills. They were always the convenient option. That somebody who didn't want to, take the time to light the charcoal and clean up the mess. It was pretty easy, just turn it on and turn it off, and like you did your oven. But we've had so much innovation in the wood fired, with the pellet grills, and even with the charcoal grills nowadays. I mean, there's so much innovation coming out, and new gadgets and new things that people are designing and building to make it a lot easier to cook out on your patio. I mean, even these the flat top griddles like the Camp Chef and the Blackstone. I mean, those things are really catching on fire, because now people can cook the stuff that they used to back when they had to cook at McDonald's or something. I don't know what it is, but I mean, those things seem to be growing as well. So
Absolutely. There's nothing like putting the Waffle House hat on and throwing some hash browns down on that griddle. I don't have a propane. Well, I've got a griddle that sits on my Camp Chef propane stove. So I've got a little 18-inch griddle that I can use for that sort of thing. But man, I'm really space constrained these days. I would love to have a 36-inch griddle out there, and I know I would cook on it a lot, but I just I need to talk to the wife about some expansion on the man cave party deck, maybe.
well, you got that big Alpha pizza oven out there that is probably taking up a lot of room, but those things are pretty cool as well. uh what do you think? How do you like that thing? I know you've cooked some.
That's a
I know you've cooked some other things besides pizza on it, and that's one of the things I like is that you kind of do some videos that show you can use these things like that, like the Alpha pizza oven for other things.
Oh yeah, the Alpha's awesome at pizza, but it's awesome at a lot of other things as well. And that's one of the marketing things that Alpha keeps using. I think if you look at some of the posts that Alpha makes on social media, one of their hashtags is not only pizza or not just for pizza. I can't remember exactly. I think it's not only pizza is one of their things. And I've done pizzas on it, of course, but I've cooked lasagna in it. I've cooked, sausage, macaroni, and cheese. I've done there. I cook macaroni and cheese on absolutely anything because that's just something we do. But the I've done a Boston Bud in it. I've done loaves of sourdough rustic style bread. It's really a fascinating oven. Uh, it took me a little while to learn how to tame that beast, but now that I've got the hang of it, there's really not much I can't cook on it, and it just does a beautiful job.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things. I live in Florida. You live in Central North Carolina. I know a lot of people up north, where it snows and gets really nasty as far as weather, don't have the opportunity to cook, that much outside during the wintertime. But I know I could cook pretty much all year round, and I'd prefer to cook outside. Um, I do most of the cooking in my house, and I know that you do too. So it's just more fun for me to figure out ways to move stuff that I would normally cook inside to the outside. And that's one of the things that I think some of these cookers have made it easier to do, like with the Kamados. You can do more than it's not just cooking hot dogs and hamburgers and brisket and pork butt anymore. And that's one of the things I like about some of your videos. You show us all these things that you would normally cook in an oven or some other different way and move them outside.
Exactly. That's one of the things I say over and over again. Uh, if you can cook it in the oven, you can also cook it on a grill. And when people grab onto that idea and run with it, you see them they start looking for excuses to cook outside. And that's kind of what I did. When I first started out, all I ever did on a grill was hamburgers, hot dogs, steaks, and chicken breasts. And, just like uh, average Joe next door, that's all I ever used the grill for. And until I got my first smoker, which was the Weber Smoky Mountain, I never probably would have gone any further than that. But the uh, the ability to bring a grill up to a temperature range, 350, 400, 450, or wherever you want it to be, and park it there and have it maintain that temperature. It's an outdoor oven, and you have to look at it that way. You can cook anything on it, and that fire that you build, however you decide to build that fire, is going to determine how much beneficial flavor addition you're going to get to whatever you're throwing on there. The macaroni and cheese, for instance, takes on a beautiful flavor from a very clean burning hardwood lump charcoal fire, or the same sort of fire going on the Alpha oven, the pizza oven, for instance. Uh, it just brings a new level of flavor to something that you're used to having come out of the oven. And people get into that, and once I can actually talk somebody into trying that, they never seem to go back. They're hooked.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people get in their head that everything's going to be really smoky when they cook it outdoors or they cook it in grills, and that's not necessarily the case. And we're going to kind of discuss that later on in this episode about smoke and how it can be used. But I tell people a lot. You can cook a lot of things without using smoke or have very little smoke or very that you couldn't even tell you cooked it out on a grill, because you can
Right.
control the amount of smoke, and that's one of the things that some of these newer type cookers, like the one that you're working on now, the Caribbean and the master built gravity fed smoker, where they produce the smoke in a different way that the other grills don't.
Right. The Caribbean is a really unique design in the world of barbecue. That grill, from the playing with I've done so far, or that smoker, I can produce heat and smoke that is so clean on that grill that you would think the food came off a gas grill. You would think there was no smoke involved. Uh, it's got controls where you decide whether you want that clean or if you want it a little dirtier, and you get to learn to play with that. And I'm still in that learning stage of learning to play with where I get my smoke from in that smoker's firebox, and it allows me to tailor that flavor. I could bake in that oven, and I have no doubt that if I could get it hot enough, that I would never know that it was cooked over a wood fire. So, yeah, there's a learning curve to determining where your smoke's coming from and how much of it you're going to get. And like you said, we're going to talk about that in a little more detail.
Yeah, and some of these newer pellet grills that have the Wi-Fi and some of the other functions to them. I know that Camp Chef just came out with their Wi-Fi pellet grill, and it's not just the Wi-Fi control, but what they also did is they incorporated the PID function where you can dial the smoke in a little bit more, fine tune it, so it's not just controlling just the temperature and try to figure it out from there. So some of these they get a little bit more technical in their controls, that they can actually dial that smoke in to very little smoke or a lot more smoke. So I mean, that's one of the things that just fascinates me about all the technology that's now in these new grills that are coming out, and that continue to keep going. I mean, I just every year it just something else new comes out. Like this master built gravity fed, which is a lot of people are jumping all over it because it's supposed to be the pellet grill killer. A lot of people don't like pellet grills because of the the smoke profile that they have, but this master built seems to be kind of like a hybrid. I know you've seen them in person and you've touched them and you kind of know the concept.
Well, I got to play with one. Masterbuilt had brought a couple of them to the Atlanta Grill Company event to show off, and I did get to play with it. I've been familiar with the concept of gravity feed smokers for a long time. I've never owned one. It's one of the few types of smokers I don't have any firsthand experience on, but I do understand how it works, and it's basically just a charcoal smoker. But what Masterbuilt's done, they have automated it and turned it into basically a gravity feed smoker that's computer controlled. That concept's not entirely new either, because a lot of the competition grade gravity feed cabinet smokers that people have, they're running them with tools like the Flame Boss and the Fireboard and the Barbecue Guru stuff. They've got computerized fan controls hooked up to those, but the difference you have here is a Masterbuilt product that's $500 versus a competition grade cabinet smoker that starts at $1,500 and starts climbing the ladder from there. So it's brought that concept to an audience that it was not available to before, and it's really interesting. I helped set a couple of these up at Atlanta Grill Company with Chef Alex Suckup before the event, and I was really impressed with the way they work, what they do, and how they work. But yeah, it's another a tool that will give somebody access to a charcoal system that doesn't want to mess with charcoal.
Yeah, and I think that's the whole reason why people are getting into it a lot more. It's some of the stuff that maybe the mystery that the competition barbecue guys, back when they had that the show on TV, that people say, oh man, I wish I could do that. Now people can do that in their backyards or get similar results, or have this type of stuff where they're not having to babysit a smoker for hours on end, which was always been the big issue, is like, who's got 12 hours to take care of, make it, feed the fire, to make sure the brisket doesn't burn or get out of, the fire doesn't get out of control or runs out of wood or stuff like that. So all these new gadgets really help out, and I think it's going to continue to grow once these people realize that, man, the amount of different kinds of food you can produce with these things is just amazing to me.
It is, and I think the technology is going to keep growing, just like every sector. Technology improves every year. It's at an alarming rate, and I really, 15 years ago, I never would have imagined technology even really being a part of barbecue and grilling, but here we are. It's here, and it's a big deciding factor these days. In fact, and as to what a customer will buy, they go shopping, they want a pellet grill, but they don't want it unless it's got that Wi-Fi control where they can peek at their temperatures while they're at soccer practice with their kids or something, or check on the meat temperature while they're at work, and run it while they're not even at home. So I guess in this day and time, you've got a base of users here that wants to be involved in barbecue, but they can't be at home during the time it takes to run it. And the Wi-Fi controls give you that sort of ability to have a cook going at home and to tweak it and to know when something needs to happen when you're not even there.
Well, and also the price of these things have come down a lot. I mean, it used to be, you had to really spend a lot of money to get some of these, fancier, more sophisticated cooking systems. And, like with the Masterbuilt, like you said, it's $500. I mean, to get anything closer to that before, you were in, $2, $3, $4, $5,000 or more, because it's more for competition type guys that are willing to spend that type of money. But the better technology gets, I guess it's just like anything. I remember when plasma TVs were $7,000, for a 40-inch plasma, and now they're $300. So I guess the more it's out there and the more it's geared more towards the everyday person. They sell more of them, so that it just drives the price down and it gets more people involved.
Well, it does, and the competition keeps increasing in the market. Every now and then you'll have a new competitor come along. So when I first got into looking at automated temperature control for my Weber Smoky Mountain, the Barbecue Guru product was about the only product out there. I don't recall right offhand if there was actually anything else. I think that Auber Instruments may have had something going on at that time, but soon after Barbecue Guru started hitting the scene, we had some new competitors coming along in the market. I don't remember all of them. There have been quite a few, but some of the more common ones out there today are the Flame Boss and the Fireboard, and they are really lighting up the scene, literally, with Wi-Fi control and monitoring. And people are fascinated by data. You get to look at the graph of your temperature. You get to see the graph of your pit temperature versus the meat that's on it. You can monitor the pit temperature, and you can monitor up to 5 or 6 pieces of meat at the same time with something like the Fireboard. It's just incredible at what you can do with it.
Yeah, exactly. And like with these new pellet grills and stuff, though, you can turn the temperature up, turn it down. Even with the eye command on the Kamado Joe, you can, hey, if you're, like you said, across the room, and all of a sudden, you're running out of time, your guests are going to arrive early or something, and you want your pork butt to be done, an hour earlier, you can crank the heat up from your across the room and monitor it. So it's just amazes me. But all right, well, we're going to go ahead and break for an ad here and talk about Inkbird for a second. But when we come back on the other side, we're going to talk about smoke. We're going to dig deep into your ideas and how smoke, and my ideas too, and how smoke is used, how it can be used. So I'll be right back with John Setzler of Man Cave Meals. Hey y'all, it's Darren, and today I want to talk about the Inkbird Wi-Fi Rainproof 4 Pro barbecue thermometer that's brand new. The IBB Q4T has a rechargeable battery that can last up to 26 hours once it's fully charged, and you can monitor it from pretty much anywhere with the 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi that it uses. It comes with the brand new Inkbird Pro app that you can monitor your meat and the temperature of the grill from pretty much anywhere, from your house, anywhere in the house, from your office, from the store, driving down the street. Inkbird makes some really awesome barbecue products, and this one is no exception. Check it out below with the link to Amazon, you can use the code that's listed for $30 off, making it only $70. Check out Inkbird and all their products. Now back to the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. Okay, we're back, and let's dive into this because this is a great topic. I had a lady on last year on the podcast who actually runs a business out in California where she sells, smoking wood, and she sells a lot to barbecue guys and restaurants and all that. And we had a good discussion, but I know this is something you know, and you delve deep into a lot, is using smoke as a seasoning. So let's talk about that.
Well, yeah, I listened to that podcast, and I was fascinated with the kinds of woods and whatnot she has. I'm actually probably going to try some of her product this year. But yeah, smoke is a spice. That's the way I like to define it. You treat it like any other spice, and just like any other spice, you can have too much of it on your food. So one of the things that you have to be real careful of when you're dealing with smoke is smoke's perfectly capable of ruining whatever you're putting it on. So it's always better when you are learning to use smoke, use less rather than more, because nobody's ever going to step away from your dinner table and say, dang, that didn't have enough smoke on it. But if they're smelling like smoke in their cars when they leave your house for dinner, you probably put a little bit too much on it.
Yeah, I've over smoked, poultry is one of the things that can get over smoked really quick, especially if you use, super strong wood or way too much of it. And I've had a smoked turkey that, like you said, after you're done eating it, you can smell it for 3 days afterwards.
Exactly. And my personal preference in smoke has changed since I started doing this. I used to like a heavier smoke profile. I used to, when I first got started smoking on that Weber Smoky Mountain, I over smoked everything I cooked because I didn't think, if I didn't see smoke coming out of the smoker, I thought it wasn't working. So I'd throw another hunk of wood on there. But over the years, my personal taste in smoke has become the less is more idea. I like to have a very light smoke profile on what I cook. In my perfect world, my smoked food, when I pick it up off the plate and raise a fork to my mouth, that's when I'm going to smell the smoke. Or that's when I like to smell it. I don't care if I can smell it while it's sitting on the dinner table, but I want to smell it when I put it in front of my face. And it's really hard to do. It's kind of hard to get smoke that subtle, but that's my personal goal with it.
Yeah, I kind of agree. It's something just like, I use the analogy of salt. Salt is good, and it's got, it can make things delicious, but it can also, you can overpower food with salt and make it to where you just can't eat it. And I think the same thing with smoke. If you use the wrong kind of wood to smoke, or you use too much, and especially, like I said, on certain types of foods, fish or poultry, you can definitely overpower it. And, like you said, just make it to where you don't want to eat that again. That's why that's
Exactly.
why I have people, they'll smoke a turkey, and I always tell them, don't use too much wood, or don't use mesquite, or,
Right.
or oak, use something. If you're going to use oak or hickory, make sure you just use very little of it, because it can overpower it.
Well, exactly. My personal preference with poultry is I don't even throw any smoke wood on that. If I'm cooking on something like the Kamado, uh, I get enough of a smoke flavor just from the hardwood lump charcoal itself to satisfy my personal taste for smoke in the poultry. But yeah, it always does start. It's a good idea to start out low. I recommend people don't put more than one wood chunk on there for your first cook, and eat that. And if you decide that that wasn't enough smoke, next time you cook one, add a little bit more, but don't overdo your first one, because you'll turn your family off. You'll turn your family and friends off of eating your smoked foods if you really make it too smoky and acrid. they're not going to want to come back.
And I think, talking about that, one of the draws to pellet grills, and you see in some of these smoking groups on Facebook, a lot of people complain that they're not smoky enough for them. Those are the regular barbecue guys, but a lot of people like that lighter smoke profile, like you said. They don't want that heavier smoke, so it makes it more. It's easier for them also, but they don't get that heavy smoke profile that they've had before and disliked. Because I'm sure a lot of people that don't eat barbecue all the time don't like a real heavy smoke profile.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I want to talk about also when we talk about how different grills produce smoke, because I have a theory about what you said. You said a lot of people think that pellet grills don't produce enough smoke or heavy enough smoke. I have a theory about that. Those people are people that have experience with other types of grills. I've never heard anybody make that complaint if they are a person who their first wood fired grill was a pellet grill. They love it. They think it's beautiful and they love the smoke flavor they get from that. But it is a different smoke production process on a pellet grill than it is with something like a Kamado or a Weber kettle, and the results are different because of it.
Right. So let's get into the different types of wood that produce, that you use for smoke. Of course, most of them are,
Right.
they have to be like a nut wood. They're not, or a fruit type wood. They're not something like a pine or anything like that because of the heavy sap and all that. Right.
Right. The smoking woods typically are all hardwood. I don't know of any non-hardwoods, but in general, fruit woods and nut woods are good smoking woods. That's not always the case. One comes to mind right away that I had a bad personal experience with was walnut. For some reason or another, that's not a good smoking wood, and don't ask me how I know, but just take my word for it. So, yeah, all nut woods are not good. But here's the deal: if you're shopping for smoking woods, whatever you find in a bag available to buy is going to be a good smoking wood. You're not going to have to guess at whether or not it's okay to use that. But if you're going to cut a log out of your neighbor's backyard from a tree that fell and turn it into smoking wood, you might want to do a little research beforehand to make sure you're not going to ruin whatever food you put on the grill with it. But yeah, all of those, the nuts and fruits, you've got apple, cherry, peach. People use orange wood. You might be able to get a hold of some of that down in Florida pretty easily. A pear is a very light. Grape, people use grapevine, and those are all fairly light. The fruit woods are typically a less intense than some of the nut woods. You come up the ladder and you get on the nut woods with like oak and pecan. Those are fairly mild or mid-range smoke intensities in the nut woods. And then you go on up the ladder, you've got hickory. Hickory is fairly powerful, and mesquite's incredibly powerful. So yeah, knowing what kind of wood produces what intensity of smoke's a good thing, because if you take one fist size chunk of hickory, it's going to produce a lot more powerful smoke flavor on your food than one fist size chunk of something like cherry.
Yeah, or apple. Apple's kind of a light wood, and I always tell people to start out with, I love pecan, and I love mixing it with like cherry or apple, because it can give you, a couple different profiles, and that's just like mixing salt and pepper or garlic together. Mixing some of these woods together can give you a different flavor, a different end product. But one of the woods I simply cannot stand and I won't use. I used to use it. I used it, when I first started, and I don't know why. I think it was one of the things like when you used walnut. I used mesquite to cook a pork butt or something, and it had, I guess I used way too much, and it just, for some reason, it left like an oily aftertaste, and it was just, it got me to, I will never use mesquite on anything again. And I don't know, people in Texas seem to love it. And I guess it's still one of, they sell it around. So I guess people use it a lot, but that's one of the woods I won't ever use again.
Well, it is, and it's iconic in the world of barbecue. And it one of the things that makes mesquite iconic is the aroma, and that's the case with all smoking woods. You've got a taste on one side to look at, and you've got aroma on the other side. Not many people believe me when I tell you this, but in my opinion, I don't know if I'm in opinion or fact here, but the taste is all the same. Um, your salt analogy was a good thing for using when you're figuring out smoke taste. A perfectly salted item, you could compare that with something like cherry. And when you move up to oak, the uh, the example would be that's borderline. That's about the maximum amount of salt you would want. And then you move up to something like hickory or mesquite, and you can call that over salted. The flavor's not changing per se when you go to the more intense smoke woods, but the intensity of the flavor is what's changing. So yeah, that's a different flavor, but it's really the same flavor at a more intense level. The real differences in the smoking woods, from what I can tell, are the aroma. Uh, if you hold your nose when you're eating food, you can't. When you don't smell the aroma, a lot of things taste the same, and that holds true for smoke as well.
Yeah, I kind of agree, and that goes back to your analogy on, some of the things where you don't, you want the smoke to hit you when you get it up close to your face and not reeking from the table, or from the room, the room next door. When you can smell it before you get in the next room to do that. So I guess that the aroma to me as well, you can really tell when you're producing way too much smoke from a grill. When you walk out on your deck and you can just tell that's way too much smoke coming out of there. Let alone the color.
Well, sometimes the smoke, I expect more of an aroma when I'm out on the party deck, simply because that smoke is wafting in the air around where I'm cooking. I don't expect the aroma to be low out there, but yeah, it's a good gauge, and you kind of have to look at your grill. One of these people uh, are telling everybody that the color of the smoke that comes out of your grill is going to tell you whether it's good or bad. That's another pet peeve point of mine, because that's not always true. It's not usually true. Thin blue smoke, yeah, that might be good, but if there's white smoke coming out of your grill, it's not necessarily bad smoke. It's not necessarily smoke at all, or it's not necessarily smoke that's coming from the wood. There's a lot of things going on inside a grill that'll change the color of your smoke, that's got nothing to do with whether it's good or bad smoke.
Right. I think the whole thin blue smoke thing came from people wanted to give somebody an idea of when the bad stuff is burnt off. But really, white smoke has got a lot of water in it. It's a lot of steam coming out of it. It's not just the bad stuff that makes it taste bad as well. So
You get a lot of white smoke also from fat burning. If you've got a Boston Bud on your grill and it's dripping fat on a hot heat deflector or into the coals itself, it's going to produce white smoke, and that is far from a bad smoke. That smoke is definitely the kind of smoke you want to have coming back onto your food.
that's for sure. So let's talk about different smoke or different smokes for different foods. We kind of hit on that a little bit. You want your lighter woods like apple and pecan and stuff like that for more like your poultry and fish, right?
Well, yeah, it's in this question, it's all really a personal preference, in my opinion. I'm not one to pair uh, a smoke source with a food. Like, people say alder works great with fish, for instance, or apple works great with pork, or oak works great with beef brisket. Um, that that's all fine and well, and it's a personal preference. I think the aroma should if you should find a smoking wood that has an aroma that you like, and use it. one of my guilts when it comes to this is in this point in my smoking career, I'm using about two different kinds of smoking wood, and I use them in a 50-50 mix about all the time and on about everything. I'm mixing 50% pecan, 50% cherry when I can. And every now and then I'll do the exact same thing with hickory and apple. And I don't I don't think that I really need to go off the deep end, pairing a particular smoke with a particular food. I don't do it. My dinner guests never ask me what kind of wood did you smoke that with. It's just not the conversation that comes up about the food if it comes up. I don't typically start conversations about food with people that are eating it, but if somebody asks, I'm happy to tell them. And I just try to avoid that, but there's charts all over the internet. If you'll Google a smoke pairing with food, you'll find a bunch of them, and you'll also find that different sources don't agree with each other. People will tell you one wood works great here, and somebody else will tell you that another one works great there. So it's a personal preference thing, and that's about where I like to leave it in terms of pairing.
Well, and I think a lot of people get that from the intensity of the smoke that each wood produces, and like you said, you can control that with all the different woods. If you could over smoke something with alder just as well as you could a hickory or oak, by dumping a lot more of it in there, I'm sure. So you can control the amount of smoke that's going to hit your food no matter what kind you're using, except for mesquite. I hate mesquite, so just saying that. but I kind of agree. I tend to use a lot of pecan, and I mix it with cherry or apple. And once in a while, if I can't find pecan, I'll grab hickory. And what I do with that is I'll use about half as much hickory as I would pecan, because of the
Right.
intensity of the hickory. It's a very similar profile as pecan, but it's just more intense, like you said. So I'll just, instead of using a fist size chunk of pecan, with hickory, I might use a half a fist size. So you can control the intensity of the food. So, like you said, it doesn't have to be a specific wood for a specific type of food. It's more, you can control, no matter what kind of wood you're using, you can control the intensity that food's going to get, from the smoke.
Exactly, and that's how I like to look at it.
Yeah, and I think people put those charts out there because try to make it easy. They try to make it easier for people. Well, if you use alder for fish, then you're not going to over smoke it unless you dump the whole thing full of alder in there. So yeah, it's just trying to
Right,
make things more simple for people. But
and they're often coming from a place that would like to sell
yeah,
you 5 different bags of wood chunks instead of just
exactly.
one.
So let's kind of move on from the pairings, because that's kind of, I think we're on the same thing. People they can use the different kinds of wood if they feel like it, if they want to go by those charts. But I think once people start experimenting,
Exactly, and that's where you want to leave it. You recommend try all of it, try every bit of it that you can get your hands on at one point or another, and figure out which ones you like.
right? Exactly. And then once you start playing around with it yourself, then you figure it out, how much of pecan do I need for poultry as opposed to pork or beef, because beef can take smoke a little bit more. So hey, I end up using more smoking wood for beef than I do poultry, for sure. So
Right.
okay, well, let's get into how smoke is produced, and different kinds of smoke.
Well, smoke is produced by burning the wood, and it's as simple as that. And then it immediately turns not simple, because you've got to look at how that wood's burning, and in what environment that wood is burning. In the best case scenarios for producing smoke, you've got a chunk of wood that's on fire with a visible flame. That is the holy grail, especially in the world of competition barbecue. You see all these guys out here with these $15,000 or $20,000 trailered offset smoker rigs. They've got a firebox on one end of it where they've got a small hot fire going, and the wood that's on that fire is ignited. It is combusting with a visible flame. That's producing clean smoke. At the other end of that scale, you've got a low oxygen environment where that wood is just smoldering rather than burning with a visible flame. And what's happening when this wood is smoldering or burning? The volatile compounds in that wood, those saps and rosins and the water, different things are happening to it. When you got that hot fire, the flame, more of that stuff is burning away. When you've just got it smoldering, it's just vaporizing some of that. It's not all burning away. So the smoldering wood produces a more intense version of that same wood. So if you've got cherry, for instance, that we talked about being a light intensity smoke wood, cherry that is smoldering produces a more intense flavor than cherry that is ignited and burning. So you've got to look at that also. You got to know your pit. You've got to know how your smoke's being produced, so you can figure out which type of wood you want to use and how much of it. Because, like I said, one fist size chunk of cherry in a Kamado is going to produce a more intense smoke profile than one fist size chunk of wood burning in a stick burner. So that's two ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, and I think, that's one of the things with the popularity of, especially in the competition circuit with stick burners, is because you can cook at a higher temperature with that, all those, sticks of wood, and get a cleaner, better tasting smoke profile than you could on just a Kamado or a Weber kettle, or even a Weber Smoky Mountain, because you're using charcoal for your heat, and your wood is mostly smoldering. It's not burning flame.
Well, it's not necessarily a lower temperature. When you're talking about these offset cookers, they're larger cookers. The cooking chamber on those is typically a lot bigger than something like a Weber Smoky Mountain or a Kamado. And you can still cook at 225, 250, 275 in that environment. You just have a small fire. You have to adjust the temperature in your pit by how big your fire is. And it's the difference you have there, the trade-off you get, is that fire in that offset cooker's got to be constantly maintained. And when I say constantly maintained, I say anywhere between every 30 minutes to an hour, you have to feed it some more wood. It's not a set and forget system. So there's where part of your trade-off is on how your smoke gets produced.
Yeah, and mostly your stick burners are bigger, so they got more air in there to keep that temperature. Your thermometer's not right up close to your firebox. Your thermometer's over by where your food is, which is quite a ways away, than compared to a Kamado or a Weber or a Smoky Mountain, where it's underneath and it's going straight up at it. So the heat's kind of, that's why it's offset. It's kind of going sideways, so the air is cooling as it's heading towards the food.
Exactly.
So that's what I mean. Your fire is a lot hotter, but
Yes.
your temperature, your pit is the same.
Right.
So you have to burn a hot.
Right. The fire is
Yeah,
a lot hotter.
exactly. So,
And the pellet grill produces a fire in almost the exact same way as an offset. You've got a very small hot fire burning in a pellet grill, and you've got a high airflow, a high air volume, which is giving you that cleaner smoke that we talked about, which produces a lighter intensity smoke profile. And like we talked about earlier, your pellet grill people, the pellet grill owners who say that it's not a heavy enough smoke profile are comparing that to a system like a Kamado or like a Weber Smoky Mountain, where the smoke's coming from a low airflow, smoldering smoke type of environment, which is true. They're not telling you a lie. They're just comparing it to the different setup. And don't get me wrong here either. I'm not saying that the Kamado or something like the Weber Smoky Mountain's a poor environment. It's just an environment you need to master by learning how much smoke wood to put in there. You can get great tasting smoke on these smoldering systems just by throttling the amount of smoke wood you put in there to start
Right.
with.
It's just like, competition pit master learning how to keep his big offset at 225, just what size fire and how much he has to put in every hour to keep it right where it needs to be. There's an art to it, it was a learning curve.
Right. It's definitely an art. It's definitely an art, and it's very important to know your pit. You need to the more you use it, the better you'll get at it. And when something's not right, when something doesn't come out like you like it, it's good. It's kind of good to have notes. I recommend, people that are learning while you're learning your pit, keep notes. How much smoke wood did I put in there? What temperature was I running? Those two variables are going to stay fairly constant. So if you're running it like a Kamado, for instance, at 300 degrees, the airflow through that Kamado is going to be about the same if you're running at 300 degrees, no matter what you're doing. So the you know how much smoke wood you put on there. So next time, if you need more smoke or less smoke, you can adjust the amount of wood you put on there as long as you're still cooking at 300
It's
degrees.
kind of like what Harry Sue always says. It's not the pit; it's the pit master. How
Exactly.
Aaron Franklin, he's one of the most famous, I guess, and Franklin Barbecue is one of the most iconic barbecue places out there that people want to visit. But if you ever watched how he cooks, it's very simple. It's salt and peppers, his seasonings. He uses a certain, uh, CAB type brisket, but you know, it's all about him knowing how to use his cookers, to maximize the flavor of his, end product. So, yeah,
Right. Aaron knows
right.
his pit, and Harry Sue knows his pits. I was fortunate enough to get to take Harry Sue's barbecue class at his house quite a few years ago, and it's amazing what you can do when you know how to run your equipment. Harry, you know, how many I don't know how many championships and grand championships Harry's won with a $300 smoker, and it's all he knows how to, and that's a low airflow, low oxygen environment where your wood is smoldering. And like I said, that produces a more intense smoke flavor, but Harry knows how to make that work. You got to know
Yeah,
your
and
pit.
that's Aaron's Franklin's big secret. It's not because if you watch him, I use salt and pepper. He doesn't use any kind of super secret seasonings or anything like that, or sauces or injections or anything. It's pretty much knowing how to control the pit and the smoke that's going to that meat. you know?
Right, and it's that's all it takes is practice. And some of us will never master the pit. Would you? I've cooked a lot. I've cooked more on a Kamado than a lot of Kamado owners have, but I'm still learning new ways to do things on a Kamado grill. Um, I've tried a lot of different things. I've experimented with it, and it's fun. I always learn something, and it's the problem that I face is I don't really people don't get to see how many different things I experiment with on a Kamado because I just simply cannot make video of everything I do. And the things that I show on video for people are the easiest ways. They're not necessarily the best ways, but they're ways that work and they're ways that produce good
Yeah, I think I've
results.
done one video where I said don't do this, and I think it was a duck video. And I don't like making those videos either, but I kind of like said, you know what, I'm going to do this because this is a duck is something that people don't cook very often. It's kind of hard, and I
Right.
don't want to pretend like I'm an expert at duck. I'm going to show somebody, my mistake. you know,
Well, it's difficult to make a video showing somebody how to keep a small hot fire going in a Kamado grill. I've done a Boston Bud on a Kamado where I cook with the vents fully open and have a wood chunk in there burning and ignited the whole time, just like it would be in an offset, and it produces a different result. But if I made a video on that, what you're going to see is me every 15 or 20 minutes tending the fire. And I don't think that's what a Kamado owner is after. People who buy Kamado grills aren't buying that grill so they can tend it every 15 or 20 minutes. They buy that grill because they know how rock solid that grill will run for 15 hours without anybody having to touch it. So, that's the other reason I don't show all that stuff in video, is because it's not really what the owner's looking
Right. And I
for.
think, that's why all the pellet grills are exploding and all these other controllers, are growing because people want the convenience. They want the barbecue, they want to be able to say they're a pit master, barbecue pit master, but they really don't want to do the work and the studying and the time that it takes. They want to be able to, stick a controller on there or use a pellet grill that has the controls and then turn out a fantastic product, and they can go, look at me, I'm a barbecue pit master.
And
That's
that's
great.
fine. I'm happy for that. I'm happy for that guy because he's out there doing it. And I, I've become an advocate. I've become a big advocate of these temperature control systems over the last couple of years. I used to be that guy that says, "Oh, you don't need that. Learn how to run your grill and save the couple $100." But now, after I've been using these things fairly heavily over the last 2 years, and I have learned exactly how much time and work they can save me. So, yeah, if you don't have a temperature control system or an automated grill, put that on your wish
Exactly. I
list.
don't, if it makes more people grill in their backyard and learn new things, because then they can start all that time it took them to do that stuff. They can do new recipes and figure out more stuff they can cook outside. So, but
Absolutely.
well, that's great. I mean, I think that was a pretty good talk about smoke. Do you want anything else you want to talk about smoke? I know I kind of said I want to talk about how people use smoke differently, like for cocktails and stuff like that. But I don't really have a whole lot of experience with it. I've just seen it done where people use these smoking guns to use it for cocktails or to put on gourmet type food. I mean, one of the things that I saw when we went on our cruise last couple of times, we did the chef's table where they'll take like little pieces of tuna, that they've made certain ways, and they put it under the big glass dome with the smoke in it, and you get maybe 10 seconds of smoke on it. And it does put a little bit of a smoke flavor to whatever they're serving, but it's nowhere near like what you would get, if you were cooking on a grill. So, but I do see smoke being used in all kinds of different ways and liquid smoke and all that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm, all for it if that's what people want. I'm not one that you'd ever catch smoking ice cubes or smoking alcohol for a drink, because my problem is I get enough smoke. I'm not looking for additional things to put smoke on at the man cave because, man, my man cave smells like smoke most of the time anyway. So yeah, I'd have to work really hard to make a glass of whiskey, get a little smoke aroma on it. And yeah, I like good whiskey too much to mess with it. I'd rather have it just as it is over a big old ice ball.
I kind of agree,
So,
and I think some of that stuff, especially like I said with the smoking guns, a lot of that stuff is for show more than anything.
yeah, and it's fun, and I'm all supportive of people that want to do that. I would never try to say don't do that. It's just not my gig. Uh, Liquid smoke, however, does have a place in my life. I don't know if it's something I should even talk about because that's about as taboo in this field as using Kingsford starter fluid to light your grill. I
I
mean,
know I kind of agree with you. I think
I,
liquid smoke does have a place that, especially for use in sauces and stuff like that.
I'll just leave it at this. I do use liquid smoke for some things. I'm just not going to tell you where I do it.
Well, that's fair enough, but I think it has its place. But one of the things I don't like about it, I won't use it in like sausage or anything like that, just because of the fact that I just don't know how to use it to where, because it can be overpowering, like you said. Um,
Well, it's just
right.
like your wood smoke. You have to experiment with it. You have to air. on the low side and figure out where your sweet spots are, because yes, you can use too much of
Yeah,
that
and
as
it doesn't take
well.
a lot. It's very, very concentrated stuff. So, but definitely it's it's a product that's there and people use it. I mean, I've seen one of the places that I've seen it used, which I just can't stand, is people will inject turkeys and poultry with it. And some of these like pre-smoked turkeys you buy, that's what they use, and it's like you can really tell that it's an overpowering flavor.
Yeah, I think they might do that
Right.
once.
Well, anything else you want to talk about, John? I think it's about time for us to wrap up. I think it was a great conversation today.
Uh, well, not a whole lot. I've got a couple of new things happening uh, for me in 2020. You're going to see this. You're the first person I've told about this, but I'm going to be partnering pretty heavily with Atlanta Grill Company in 2020 to be, working with their social media campaigns. I'm going to be producing some video content for Atlanta Grill Company. We're going to do cooking. Atlanta Grill Company is going to bring up a YouTube channel. So we're going to be having a lot of fun in that area. So you'll just have to kind of stay tuned, and I'll keep you up to date as that progresses.
Now, are you going to be able to have those videos and stuff on the Man Cave Meals Facebook group as well, or?
I will share them to the Man Cave. Any video that I produce, these will be produced directly for Atlanta Grill Company, so they will appear on Atlanta Grill Company's Facebook page and their YouTube channel. But I will make them visible on Man Cave Meals as well.
Okay, just so people, I'm going to link to your Man Cave Meals Facebook page in the description below, but also I'll link to the Atlanta Grill Companies as well, so that the listeners can check them out. But also check out Man Cave Meals YouTube channel as well. John Setzler does a lot of work. Also has a lot of videos on YouTube for the Kamado Joe cooking channel as well. I've followed him for years. Also, the Kamado Guru website is still around. I know that's one of the things that you actually started years ago, and it's still there. And it's even has a good Facebook group as well. So check those out. Thanks, John. I really appreciate you coming on. More than glad to have you on again anytime you want to come on and have discussion.
Thank you, Darren, and we'll definitely do it again. I enjoy doing it.
All righty. We'll see you again on the next Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. Well, all thanks again for joining us on the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast today. I want to thank John Setzler of Man Cave Meals. Make sure you check out the links below to his Facebook group and page. And make sure you also check out the Atlanta Grill Company. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We have a great Facebook group and page, lots of interaction. And make sure you follow our YouTube channel, Fire and Water Cooking. Check out our website, fireandwatercooking.com, and join me again next time on the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast.